What is the shortest race in NASCAR history? Days upon days of preparation only to spend maybe a handful of laps on track. Or worse yet, one single corner. Or maybe only going a few feet before receiving so much damage that you have to withdraw from the race. Well, in this video, we're taking a look at the shortest NASCAR races ever attempted. And first on the list, we'll look no further than race number 9 at Talladega Superspeedway in 2009. The main driver we'll be looking at is Jeff Gordon. You couldn't have a much better start to your season than what Gordon did in 2009. In the first 6 races of the season, he was finishing 5th place on average. And to boost those numbers even further, he scored the win in race number 7 at Texas. To give you guys some perspective, he was 162 points ahead of 2nd place after just 7 races. At some point in the season, things were gonna go wrong for Jeff Gordon, and that's exactly what happened in race number 8. In a race at Phoenix, he qualified and was actually running pretty well. But throughout this race, he would get into some trouble dealing with tire rubs and making contact in a wreck. And these things led to Gordon having to pit under green, and he could never really rebound within the race. And this shrunk his lead down to 85 points. So the main story going into Talladega would be if the points leader Jeff Gordon would be able to rebound. He had a fresh paint scheme and a bunch of teammates to draft with, so it was looking like he would get back on track. But that's not what happened. He started the race in 14th place, and right away he got stuck in the middle of 3 wide behind Matt Kenseth. He stayed loyal to this line, and eventually it would boost him to the front of the field. But only 7 laps into the race, the leaders were all swapping lanes leading up to this moment.
Oh, touch. Boy, Jeff Gordon.
And around.
He's
corner of the wall.
I think that was Jeff Gordon.
Here we go. 8, 9, 10 cars. Mark Martin's involved.
Man, you hate to see this early in the race.
I believe Jeff Gordon was the first car sent.
14 cars were involved in the wreck, and of those 14, 4 of them had too much damage to run another lap. Those being Mark Martin, Jamie McMurray, Scott Riggs, and David Gilliland. Clint Boyer was almost the 5th driver on this list, but at some point in the final 2 laps of the race, he went out on the track to pick up 2 positions. But what about Jeff Gordon? Well, sometime around lap number 60, he and Kevin Harvick rejoined the race at the same time. So they were in their own little pack of 2, and this was actually a race for position 56 laps down. I think it's kind of funny to see how demolished these race cars are, but shout out to the pit crews for getting these back on track. And although Gordon wrecked just 7 laps in, he still completed 128 laps of the race. So there's definitely some drivers out there who had even shorter races, such as Kyle Larson. But before I get into Larson's 5-lap race, yes, only 5, I wanted to shout out today's sponsor, Project Motor Racing. Project Motor Racing is the newest pro motorsport game coming to PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. It's got over 70 cars from 13 different classes and 28 scanned circuits from around the world to race on, my favorites of which are Daytona and Mount Panorama. Each car in this game has been tested by pro racers to make sure that they actually handle true to real life. And within the game itself, there's an online racing mode as well as a single player career where you can manage team budgets, earn sponsorships, and buy your own race cars. When I first heard about the game, I immediately looked on YouTube and was excited to try it right away. What stood out to me were the graphics, physics, and audio of this game, and after playing the game myself, I can confirm that those things hold up. If you're looking for a fresh new racing experience to try, look no further than Project Motor Racing. You can buy it now using the link in the description or visit retail stores like Amazon, Walmart, Target, GameStop, or even Best Buy. I hope I run into some of you guys in the online mode. Okay, but not literally. But now let's get back to the video. So as I alluded to, our next shortest race is Kyle Larson at Darlington in 2025. Darlington's a track that he's been pretty successful at in recent years, but you can't hit a home run in every inning. He started this race from row 10, and many fans were rooting for him to do well just because of the paint scheme alone. But that number 5 wouldn't even reach lap number 5 before a big mistake was made.
Oh no!
Kyle Larson, backstretch.
Off of 2. Kevin, you had just told us about how narrow it is over there. There's another problem. There's a bump.
And Larson stood by in the event that his team could make repairs and restore his car to the point of logging laps again. And halfway into the race, he rejoined, completing a total of 122 of the 297 laps. In the same season, he went on to win the championship, which just further proves that this can happen to anyone. But there are NASCAR races even shorter than this, like Robbie Gordon at Atlanta in 2009. Robbie started this race in 39th place, which is basically dead last anyway, and after completing just 3 laps of this 325 lap race, that's 1% for anyone keeping track, he had this unfortunate event happen.
Car in the wall, turn 1, and it is Robbie Gordon And what a star-crossed season he has had.
That's a brand new race car they brought here this week.
Not anymore.
No.
He blew a left rear tire just 5 miles into the race. Luckily, nobody else got caught up in this, but such a hard impact into the outside wall was enough to destroy his car and prevent him from turning in another lap. And if you haven't figured it out by now, each race in this video progressively gets shorter, which I know is kind of hard to believe considering we're already at only 3 laps, but trust me, it gets worse. Because the 2012 Daytona 500 lasted just 1 lap without a caution. That first lap was relatively tame. The field was 2x2, and if anything, it was starting to thin out from the initial start. But in the tri-oval, Elliott Sadler was pushing Jimmie Johnson. Johnson's car floated up the track, and in an attempt to shuffle back in line, he spun off the 33's bumper, and this happened.
3 Fords. Trouble already. The wall. Slams to the outside. It's 5-time champion Jimmie Johnson. He collects Danica Patrick and the 34 of David Reagan.
Trevor Bayne, last year's Daytona 500 winner, was able to drive back to the pits and complete 164 of the 200-lap race. Meanwhile, other drivers like Kurt Busch and Danica Patrick weren't so lucky. They were able to make repairs and get a few extra points from running laps. As for Jimmie Johnson and David Reagan, that first lap in the race was the only lap that they'd complete. But an even shorter race was attempted by Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in 2020, and once again this one occurred at Darlington. The green flag dropped and Stenhouse was starting in 23rd place on the inside lane, but after just 2 corners, not even a full lap, this incident occurred.
Trouble back straightaway. Around goes the 47 on the very first lap, Ricky Stenhouse, with front end damage.
He made contact with Corey LaJoie, sending him head on into the inside wall. This damage fully ended his race, meaning that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. failed to complete even 1 single lap. And the next shortest race happened at Kansas in 2013. How did someone manage to wreck earlier than 2 corners into a race?
Trouble already. Cars in the wall. Danica Patrick, David Ruderman, and more down on the grass.
Well, in the first corner on the first lap, Danica Patrick was looking to take it 3 wide and make a couple of passes. But on corner entry, her car got loose. And as she was trying to save it, she overcorrected and went head on into the outside wall. In the process, she took out Cole Witt and David Ruderman, with Kyle Busch self-spinning while trying to avoid it. Those 3 all continued on in the race, but as for Danica, her day was done and she too completed a total of 0 laps.
I mean, I lifted going into turn 1 and I didn't try and do anything. I just, found myself sideways in the middle of the corner and that was it. And it's just a shame.
So if drivers are wrecking in the first turn, how can a NASCAR race possibly be any shorter? Could there have been wrecks on the first straightaway? Well, yes, exactly. In the 2001 All-Star race at Charlotte Motor Speedway, the green flag dropped under rainy conditions. Everyone struggled for grip as they got up through the gears because the track surface was slightly wet. And as the field soared into turn 1, they found out just how little grip they would have.
All the cars are loose down in the corner. The track is wet. It's Gordon, Michael Waltrip, Kevin 29 car. All these cars are wrecking because I believe it might be raining down there.
Jeff Burton, Jeff Gordon, Michael Waltrip, and Kevin Harvick all received heavy damage in turn 1. This was kind of NASCAR's fault. Actually, not even kinda, it was NASCAR's fault, and they knew it. So instead of letting the All-Star race go on without some of NASCAR's biggest stars, they made an exception. If you were involved in this crash, you were allowed to pull out your backup car and have another shot. Something NASCAR just doesn't do for points-paying races. But this was their attempt to fix the mistake. And I think Jeff Gordon really appreciated this decision, because after a 70-lap battle, he crossed the finish line in first place with his backup car. And while we're on the topic of Charlotte Motor Speedway, we have to also mention the 2004 Nextel Open. Unlike the All-Star race, this race is for the group of drivers that didn't win in the previous season. And Casey Mears would be the one to trigger a massive pileup. Mears was starting in second place in his number 41. The problem was that his transmission failed on the initial start as he reached for third gear. So Jeremy Mayfield, the car directly behind him, had nowhere to go besides his back bumper, and everyone behind them was left scrambling to find a way out. The initial contact happened right before they passed the start-finish finish line, which technically means their race was over before it ever even started. Casey Mears, Ricky Rudd, Brendan Gaughan, Scott Riggs, and Jeff Burton all retired from the race, having completed 0 laps. That was 20% of the entire field, all wiped out before even 100 feet of racing. But believe it or not, there's been incidents that have happened even earlier in NASCAR races, like in the 2002 EA Sports 500 at Talladega. The front row consisted of Mark Martin and Jimmie Johnson, and as Mark Martin was warming up his tires during the initial pace laps, his steering locked up, forcing him to collide with Jimmie Johnson. So it would make sense for NASCAR to let both teams repair their cars, but that's not what happened. Johnson's crew chief Chad Knaus was pleading his case, but NASCAR wouldn't budge. So the team elected to stay on the pole and just start the race with damage. It was the only thing they really could do. From there, the plan was to pit immediately on lap 1, but that's where the number 48 team got screwed. Throughout the whole 188 lap race, not a single caution came out the entire time. So both Mark and Jimmie were trapped 1 lap down for the entire race. By the end of it, Mark Martin finished 2 laps down, and Jimmie Johnson got pulled from the race for not meeting minimum speed after 173 laps. Possibly the most unfortunate incident on this list, but none of this compares to the dumbest start to a NASCAR race ever. In 2013, NASCAR visited their first road course of the season, Sonoma Raceway. The field was leaving pit road and joining the track in preparation to start the race. But for some reason, David Rittiman stops on the pit lane. The car behind him, Alex Kennedy, reacts fast enough to stop as well. But that's when the third car plows into the back of him. Who was it? Well, someone that didn't even have a windshield nameplate apparently.
Paulie Haraka apparently not watching what's going on in front of him, just drilled him.
I have no idea what he was doing on that.
It was Paulie Haraka, who was making his first ever NASCAR Cup Series start. Somehow they repaired the damage well enough for Paulie to start the race, but only 8 laps later, the broadcast returns from commercial to show Paulie Haraka sitting in the grass all alone with a ton of damage. According to the announcer Adam Alexander, he hit a barrier at some point. Hard to tell where or how. Despite all of this, he managed to complete 89 of the 110 total laps. But unfortunately, this was the only NASCAR Cup Series start Paulie Haraka would ever make. On a side note, in that same race, Bobby Labonte had engine troubles before the green flag ever waved, and he failed to complete a single lap in this event. So those are some of the shortest races from individual drivers in NASCAR history. If you enjoyed this video, I have a ton more just like it, so click this video on screen to watch more.